dominance, either sympathetic dominance or parasympathetic dominance.
I can totally see how this paradigm and this body of discoveries and observations were off the charts for the medical industry at that time.
It's off the charts today. I mean, although there are, interestingly enough, when I read the medical journals regularly, and increasingly they're serendipitously discovering that some people seem to have a high sympathetic tone, other people seem to have a parasympathetic tone. They seem to have, different personalities. Now, Kelly just didn't make this up by himself. I mean, Francis Pottinger Sr. was one of the world's experts in autonomic physiology in the 20th century. He wrote a book called Symptoms of Visceral Disease. The first edition was 1919, last edition 1944, went through 6 editions. And it was actually used in medical schools and osteopathic schools and chiropractic colleges as a textbook. Unfortunately, it's kind of forgotten now. And in that book, he details in great precision the anatomy, physiology, biochemistry of the autonomic nervous system, and discusses the fact that in his own experience, that certain people have a strong sympathetic system, certain people are strong parasympathetic, certain people are balanced, and they have different personalities, physiologies, biochemistries, and they tend to get different diseases. So there was precedent for what Kelly discovered. I mean, he actually relied a lot on Pottinger. Once Kelly realized that different people did well with different diets, and he was trying to work out the physiology, he went to the basic text, and he really hit upon Pottinger. And there was another neurophysiologist, University of Minnesota, Ernst Gellhorn, who also confirmed that in different people, the autonomic nervous system will show different levels of dominance, and that it will affect the psychology, physiology, biochemistry, and health patterns. So there was scientific precedent for what Kelly did, but his achievement was enormous, and was so far beyond what conventional physicians had been taught, could understand. It's so far outside their model. I mean, Kelly brought together basic neurophysiology and anthropological nutrition like Weston Price into this model where you use different diets and different supplements to manipulate the nervous system to bring people into ideal health. And it worked in practice. That was what was so amazing. It's an elaborate theory, and who cares if it's elaborate or not. In fact, it worked in practice, and we find that 40 years later, we find that it works in practice. It's a model that actually allows medicine to become easy because you're not shooting in the dark all the time. Both conventional alternative doctors, often they shoot in the dark. Doctors just throw drugs at people. Often alternative doctors just throw nutrients at patients. With Kelly's model, you know what to do. If you have a parasympathetic dominance, you don't give them large doses of B1, B2, vitamin B. You don't do it. They're going to get worse. He gave a model that was predictable and accurate, and it really simplified the practice of medicine. Once you have a model to work with, you're not shooting in the dark.
There's 2 things I want to say. One is that Dr. Kelly was an orthodontist. And I think because he was an orthodontist, when he was discovering all of this, he was an outsider from the get-go. Because he wasn't an oncologist, he didn't have the credentials of an oncologist, so he's an outsider speaking. And I think that was the first thing that worked against him in terms of introducing his findings, don't you?
It worked against him and for him. Kelly always said if he'd been a physician, he would have very easily accepted orthodoxy and been a very conventional professor at some medical school because he had an academic kind of a mind. But he was interested in tinkering and became an orthodontist and was a brilliant orthodontist and has patents in orthodontia that still hold up 50 years later. So had he been a conventional physician, he never would have discovered what he did. Because he was outside the mainstream of medicine, he was a dentist. He had no preconceived notions of what the truth should be. And when he observed in his nutritional practice that certain people did well with different diets, he didn't question it. He saw it as a fact. He saw it in his practice. He didn't have a preconceived notion of what the truth had to be. He just accepted what he saw and then went to the medical literature and saw there was support for what he did. But then on the other hand, you're absolutely right. Because he was an outsider, on the fringe, not an impeccably trained academic medical researcher, no one took him seriously. They thought by definition, because he's a dentist, not a medical researcher, he must be a quack, a fraud, a charlatan, all of those names that were used against him. So you're right. The fact he was outside the medical mainstream allowed him to be creative. He was already outside the box. He didn't have to think outside he was outside the box. He wasn't constrained by academic orthodoxy. But because he was outside the box hated him.
Right,
people
exactly.
have the power and control.
It created a whole other disassociation capacity that may not have been there otherwise. But nevertheless, he also didn't agree that the immune system protects us from cancer, but that protein digestive enzymes are the first line of defense. Can you explain why?
Yeah, everybody in the cancer world, and I've trained as a classical cancer immunologist. As you said, I was trained to do bone marrow transplantation. So I was trained, my mentor, Robert Good, was the preeminent immunologist of the 20th century. So I know conventional immunology. And both conventional immunologists and alternative practitioners believe with cancer, you have to stimulate the immune system. It's almost like a knee-jerk response. Sun rises in the east, you have to stimulate the immune system. Sun rises in the east, you have to stimulate the immune system. Kelly said the immune system is really irrelevant. It's pancreatic enzymes that kill cancer. Beard said that 110 years ago. Kelly said it 40 years ago, 30 years ago. We say it today. He was right. Now, interestingly enough, for example, parasympathetic dominants tend to have a very strong immune system. In fact, their immune system's too strong, and they're prone to immune cancers like leukemia, lymphoma, multiple myeloma, and sarcomas, which are connective tissue cancers that are related to immune cancers. Kelly said in those diseases, the immune system's too active, and you have to tone it down by toning down the overly strong parasympathetic system. In sympathetic dominance, the immune system tends to be suppressed. The sympathetic system suppresses immune function. Parasympathetic stimulates it. In sympathetic dominance, it is true their immune system is weak, but orthodox conventional immunologists, including my boss Robert Good, tried for 50 years to find some immune stimulant that would get rid of cancer unsuccessfully. To this day, immune treatments are really few and far between in terms of their successes. They really just haven't panned out. I mean, Good was made president of Sloan Kettering in 1972, promising that with immune therapies he would bring in the answer to cancer. Well, 10 years later, he was booted out because he hadn't done it. And he's, to his death, he was trying, but never could do it. So the immune system really has, and we believe, has a very secondary effect in terms of treating cancer. In fact, with the immune cancers, which we think are parasympathetic dominant tumors, you don't want to stimulate the immune system. You want to shut it off because it's already too active. Leukemia, lymphoma, myeloma are diseases of an overactive immune system. It's working too strong. You got to shut it down. And we just don't find the immune system has a primary effect on cancer or is even a primary concern, which puts me at odds with both the alternative world and conventional immunology.
Yes, exactly. That's why I'm bringing it up, because it's not to the left, it's not to the right, it's somewhere else.
It's outer space.
Yes.
And every time I pick up an alternative journal, it's about with cancer, you have to stimulate the immune. Where? Where does it say you have to stimulate the immune system? Where's the success of stimulating the immune system? Interferon, interleukin, boondoggles, billions of dollars in research on those things led nowhere. They don't cure cancer. They don't have the effect that was hoped. So even in the conventional world, where they latched onto immune therapy, there were cover stories in the mid-1980s about interleukin, the cure for cancer. Well, 20 years later, hardly anyone uses it because it didn't turn out to be the cure for cancer. So the orthodox research world has invested tens of billions, billions, in looking for the immune treatment for cancer that would be successful, unsuccessfully. So in the alternative world, I hear it all the time. It's just a catchphrase, and I just don't. It's not relevant to our way of thinking. We think of the immune system as no more important or no less important than any other system, like the respiratory, cardiovascular, gastrointestinal, endocrine. It's like any other system, important in its own way, but it's not critical for cancer any more than any other physiological biochemical system is critical for cancer.
Dr. John Beard said that enzymes digest away tumors. Why and how?
Well, unfortunately, no one's ever put up the money to do the basic science research. We've done some animal studies. We got funding from Nestle to do that, so we do know they have an anti-cancer effect. But no one's actually looked at the molecular mechanism, so it's really hypothetical. Beard believed they just start digesting away the cell membranes. And, we do know now, 100 years later, the cell membranes of cancer are far different than the cell membranes of normal tissue. For example, cell membranes of cancer have an opposite electrical charge. All membranes have a charge. In cancer, it's the opposite of normal tissue. That's one way you can distinguish them. Also, cancer cells have completely different proteins on their membrane, which are critical for cell communication. They serve as pores to bring in nutrients to get rid of waste. They're like channels through the cell membrane. And the proteins that make up these channels and these pores in cancer cells are different from those in normal tissue. And Beard suspected that the enzymes can chew up the proteins in these membrane components of cancer tissues, but leave the normal membranes alone. That's why I can take 1,000 capsules of enzyme. I'm not going to auto-digest and turn into a pile of amino acids and fat globules. I'll just get a little stomach ache if I took 1,000 capsules. But they don't digest my tissues. Pancreatic enzymes will digest meat, but they don't digest normal tissue. I mean, in pancreatitis, where you have a tumor blocking the pancreas, the enzymes can start auto-digesting and cause problems in the pancreas. But generally, they circulate in the bloodstream. They're not digesting away our tissues.
I want to talk about Steve Jobs with you. None of us want Steve Jobs to die.
Yeah, including me. Guys, another Thomas Edison. Who wants him to die? It's just terrible.
I was wondering if there's a way to get to him, or do you think it's too far in?
No, Steve Jobs, has really fancy doctors at Stanford, and one of the problems is it's wonderful to be successful and rich. One of the problems with being successful and rich is that conventional physicians at the highest level tend to court you, They see fame, fortune, ego, all those things. I mean, they're well-intentioned, of course, too. They want to help the guy. But he's surrounded by very fancy doctors. Now, Steve Jobs very well knows who I am. People have reached out to him, so he knows who I am. He's just made the choice not to come, which I respect. He didn't have to come see me.